All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a Monday night. We got Professor Giordano in the building. We're talking Trump, Harris, and history. It's the Urban Conservative Podcast. Let's go.
NASCAR. Do you like a Tribe Called Quest? Well, you gonna love the Urban Conservative.
Do you like manwich and nachos? Well, then you'd love the Urban Conservative.
Do you like guns? Do you like butter? Well, you're gonna love the Urban Conservative.
Yo, what's good, son? You like pit bulls, say? You like solving Sudoku puzzles? Then you gonna love the Urban Conservative.
Hey, buddy, if your car making a sound like this, you might want to get you some power steering fluid and check out the Urban Conservative Podcast.
Are you repulsed by the idea of drag queen story time at your local library, but enjoy Carol Baskin TikTok memes? Then you would enjoy the Urban Conservative.
Do you want to slap your boss and then go home and make yourself some golden brown pancakes covered in butter and freshly made warm boysenberry syrup? Then you'll love the Urban Conservative.
You're a little over Cardi B, and you're repulsed by the thought of Hogmaw. Check out the Urban Conservative. You ready?
And I'm running for U.S. House District 12 here in Charlotte as a Republican this November. We know that the Democrat machine controls Charlotte, but a common sense Republican like me can win if we can get our message out to the voters. If you're like me and fed up with deep state career politicians like Alma Adams and Joe Biden, help me send a message that their time is up. I've done something by running for Congress. Now I need you to do something. Visit aliforcongress.com, make a contribution. Together, we can make America better. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. Monday night, you tapped in with the Urban Conservative Podcast. Do us a favor right off the rip. Hit that like, follow, share, and then do me a favor, share it again. The website, as usual, tuconservative.com. That is where you can go to support what we do here at the Urban Conservative. Not only do we support candidates and getting their messaging out, but we also love to promote conservative values and ideas and policy positions to our urban centers throughout this beautiful, beautiful country of ours. And that's what you can do. tuconservative.com is the website that you can visit, tuconservative.com. We got a special show for y'all this Monday. As you know, we're politic buffs, if you will. You just saw the commercial. My brother's running for Congress. But, however, we're always students of the game. You got to remain teachable. You have to remain a student. And to that end, we have an alumnus. What is that? What's the proper term? Alumni? Alumnus?
Alumni?
I don't know.
Alumni is, I think alumni is plural.
Okay, so what's the singular?
Alumnus?
I don't know. I don't like the way that sounds. But, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Nicholas Giordano, host of the P.A.S. Report, political science professor, all things political guru, blah, blah, blah. You know, I get the accolades could just shower upon you. Doc, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How you guys doing?
We're doing. Like I just told you, just smashed out some shepherd's pie and not doing too bad on this beautiful Monday night. So, you know, can't complain.
So Doc, look, I gotta tell you, it was an absolute honor to do your show. I can't wait for that to come out. Make sure everybody, y'all check out the PAS report everywhere where podcast is available. Had a great time jumping on your show. We got to talk a lot about my race, but tonight, Doc, we got some questions for you. We need your wisdom.
Well, your race is the important race. I mean, come on now. We got to keep that going.
Yeah.
We got to get you in there. That's all.
Let me jump right in by showing something on the screen here. And this is what I find interesting. The first part of this is, now that we have access to things like this, right? Now that we have access to things like the poly market, where we can see where people are putting their money
in real time, what does this do, seeing this politically speaking for our country? What is, because I've never seen this before. This is my first time really engaging with stuff like this. What does having these betting markets playing in a presidential election or playing in politics, what does this mean for the history of elections in our country?
Well, we don't really know yet because this is only really the second presidential election cycle where we've actually seen the poly market. It may have been around in 2016, but it wasn't popular or anything. We did see it used also in the 2022 midterm elections, but we don't know its impact. Now, the theory is, and it's just a theory, as people are putting money on Donald Trump, obviously, his numbers are skyrocketing on the poly market because that's where the bets are going. Most people are now starting to think that he's going to be the next president of the United States. And the question is that the same trend that's going on in the public arena right now? Polling suggests that the trend is moving in Trump's direction. I mean, if you had to pick a political campaign that you had to run and you had a choice of Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, certainly you'd rather be on the Donald Trump campaign team today. But with the polling, it's still really tight, right? I mean, if we look at all the swing states, if we look at the national polls, you'll see Donald Trump up 1 or 2 points, maybe 3. You'll see Kamala Harris up 1 or 2 points or even 3, but it's still all within the margin of error. So as of right now, as of today, while the momentum is certainly appears to be on Trump's side, the reality is this is a coin flip election. We still have no idea. It could go either way. And there are a lot of variables that we can't really compare this to, right? We've never seen a presidential candidate who was president drop out in the middle of a race and then it go to a vice president where she didn't have to go through any grueling primaries. She didn't have to get exposed for being the fraud that she is. And so when she first entered the race, well, there was a euphoric high, right? It was Kamala. She went from the most incompetent vice president in the history of the United States to all of a sudden this goddess that could do no wrong. That's one of the smartest people in the room, which we all know that's false. At the same time, we've never witnessed 2 assassination attempts on a presidential candidate, nevertheless a former president, and we don't know the impact of that. We don't know the impact of the 4 criminal trials against Donald Trump. And yes, the Florida one has been done away with. The other ones are pretty much not happening as of right now. The New York one where he was convicted, it looks like that'll probably be overturned after the election. And then you have the civil cases against Donald Trump. And one of the things that is noteworthy is every time they tried to go after him criminally and civilly, his poll numbers kept on rising because there are a lot of Americans that feel, I may not like the man, but this seems political. And that's what happened. They solidified Trump as the candidate, and they still don't understand why people gravitate towards Trump, which they should have figured it out by now. But we don't know what poly market really is indicative of. We don't know if it's going to be, tell us exactly who wins. And understand, on the day of Hillary Clinton winning the presidential election, she had a 92% chance of winning the presidential election. Obviously, it didn't go her way. So I tell all Republicans, don't take anything for granted. Pretend that the president is down 5 points. Every single vote matters. And this is one of those critical elections where it will determine the pathway of America's future.
All right, I got to go back to one thing because I think a lot of our Democrat friends, and maybe you could speak to this, don't realize the level of disenfranchisement that took place with Kamala becoming the nominee. So can you speak a little bit to that? Because I feel like that was a big circumvention of the political norm. Like that wasn't right
of democracy, you want to say?
Yeah, there you go. Well, but can you speak a little to that?
Before you jump in on that, Doc, I got a comment earlier on a post that said it was Democrats and they were like, write in the rightful Democrat nominee, Joe Biden. So there's clearly an undercurrent of Democrats who are like, we need to write Joe Biden in because that's who we wanted. So there you go.
Well, there's so many different levels to this. I mean, first of all, ordinary Democrats should be furious at what took place. Okay. Now, Joe Biden's cognitive decline wasn't shocking to you guys or myself. We've been paying attention to it for years. But the media manipulated and hid it from ordinary Democrats that only tune into MSNBC or CNN or some other far left outfit. Then, when it was exposed, oh, wow, this guy really does have dementia or Alzheimer's or something's going on with his cognitive abilities. Then the Democrats had the audacity to force him off the ticket. It's not like Joe Biden went willingly. I like that. I like how they compare him to George Washington. To me, that's just hysterical. But the reality is, he was forced off the ticket. He was threatened that if he doesn't drop from the ticket, they will invoke the 25th Amendment, and that's how he'll be remembered. The first president to be removed by the 25th Amendment. So they forced him off the ticket. And then if you notice, something interesting happened. And you wonder if it's Jill Biden telling Joe, well, endorse Kamala Harris. You know what? They want to throw you off the ticket. Let's make sure she's the one that's on the ticket. And Joe Biden endorsed her. Democrats were very short-sighted. See, they were so focused on getting rid of Joe Biden that they never talked about, well, what happens if he does step down from the ticket? What's the process going to look like? And they didn't think it through. So when Joe Biden came out and said, I'm not going to be running in the 2024 presidential race, I'm passing the baton and I'm passing it to Kamala Harris and full-throated endorsement, all the Democrats pretty much fell in line except for one major Democrat. And that was the former president, President Obama, who wanted a process in place where Democrats can have a say and select the candidate that they see fit. Now, obviously, because of what Joe Biden did, President Obama's idea never went to fruition, but it created an enormous rift within the Democrat Party because there were people that did not like Kamala Harris. They didn't want her on the ticket. They didn't believe that she's up to the task of running for president. They certainly don't believe she's up to the task of being president of the United States. And so they wanted the delegates at the convention on the first day to actually select from a round of candidates, have almost a mini primary leading up to the convention. And then on day one, that's when you have the delegates will vote and determine who the Democrat nominee was. Now, that would have been a fascinating process from a political science perspective, but it also would have created a lot of energy amongst Democrats. It would have generated so much buzz, but they didn't do that. So they anointed Kamala Harris, and this has done an enormous amount of damage. Because how can the party that screams about threats to democracy just say, you know what, we're handing the presidential nominee to Kamala Harris, the nomination to Kamala Harris, without any debates, without any discussions. It's the party bosses in the lead that have decided that this is what's good for you, ordinary Democrats. Now, you peasants just shut up and accept it. And so I think there is some bitterness and resentment there.
Gotta take a quick segue here. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking with Professor Nicholas Giordano about the 2024 election, Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, the history of this all, what we think the outcome's going to be. Jump in the comment section. Let us know if you have any questions for the good professor here. One of the things about this election, and I agree, I think that it was a big disenfranchisement of millions of Democrat voters. But one thing that we see, and I'm going to share this tab, this is as of close of voting yesterday in North Carolina, almost 3 million votes casted in North Carolina. One of the interesting things about this is, as you can see, Republicans are up almost 30,000 votes. And there seems to be a trend across the country where Republicans are like energized, coming out to vote early. If they're not in the lead, the margins are way smaller, both voting in person and by mail. Is this a messaging success on behalf of the RNC and the Trump campaign? Is this the fact that a lot of Republicans are just seeing through the mainstream media? What are we chalking this record-breaking turnout for Republicans in early voting to? What do we chalk this up to?
Well, I think it's a number of factors. So we're seeing it in North Carolina where Republicans are out leading Democrats. We're also seeing it in Arizona and Nevada as well. Republicans are leading Democrats in early voting. In Pennsylvania, Democrats usually need a 500,000 vote firewall going into election day, Well, what we're seeing is right now, Democrats are stuck at about 350,000. So they're about 150,000 short of that firewall, and Republicans are actually gaining each day against the Democrat early vote. So we're seeing a lot of trends in Republicans' direction, and I attribute it to a few things. First of all, it's the idea that the Republican Party itself, through the Republican National Committee, but more importantly, because of former President Donald Trump, speaking and saying, vote early, bank your vote, and then get other people to vote. Help people to the polls. Don't make excuses. Vote early, get your vote in. And they've been harping on that messaging. But I also think it has to do with the bitterness and resentment left over from the 2020 election. Listen, there's a lot of Republicans that still have a very bad taste in their mouth from everything that took place in 2020. And I'm not even talking about with the vote counting. I'm talking about how you had an entire election system that was changed. So you're talking about, we voted one way for X amount of years, decades and hundreds of years. And then 8 months before a presidential election, all the rules get changed. And so there's bitterness and resentment towards that. And that's another reason why you see Republicans voting early, that they want to make sure that their vote is counted. They want to make sure their voices are heard. So I think those two things are huge. And then you have to look at the ground game, okay, of ordinary individuals like Scott Presler and what he did in Pennsylvania, registering Republicans. If you look at Republican registration over the last 2 years, they've surged in a number of states because of the on-the-ground efforts, some of it independent, like Scott Presler, others organized by Republican groups, that they've had phenomenal success. Republicans are finally, something we all talked about years ago, Republicans are finally going into communities that they've long ignored, communities that they've written off to the Democrats, saying, you know what, maybe we can have a chance if we just speak to these people. And finally, it looks like it may be paying off. I guess we'll find out in a week, right?
Right. Well, before we go to commercial break, real quick, one of the things that I'm really proud of, Ali, and obviously with Professor Giordano's help, is this trend we're seeing in Black and Latino voting Republican and supporting former president, soon to be next president Donald Trump. So quickly, if you can, how much of that do you think is due to just the marketing and the messaging versus frustration, right? Because I tend to see it more as the Black voter, the Latino voters are just frustrated with being attempted to be coddled by the Democratic Party. Like this whole what's the word? The pander powder, like the sprinkling of the pander powder over the community has stopped working, right? Would that be a fair way to look at that?
Yes, it would. And I don't think a lot of it is actually due to Republican outreach. Some of it is, obviously. And having the former president go and speak to these communities and say, what do you got to lose, obviously helps. But really, it's Democrat failures for decades that have begun to open the eyes within these communities that, hey, these people have been in charge 50, 60 years. But I think what really upset these communities is the whole legal immigration thing, right? You have tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of people that are being resettled in these communities. They're getting hotel stays. They're getting their food taken care of. They're getting schooling and health care. They're getting far more than Americans each and every month. And Black residents, Hispanic residents, and white residents are saying, well, what about us? Why don't we matter? Why don't you? Our communities are falling apart. And yet you're taking all these people and you're putting them in our communities where the infrastructure is already crumbling, where the schools are already failing, where our crime is already out of control. And so you're only burdening us further. And then when we speak out against it, you tell us basically to sit down and shut up. I mean, just listen how President Obama spoke to young Black males saying, well, you have to do your job and you have to vote Democrat. Just don't ask questions, just do it. You look at how Michelle Obama came out the other night and stated, well, women shouldn't listen to their husbands. Men are angry and bitter and resentful. And, they shouldn't take that out on their wives. And they just look at their wives as vessels to give birth and to cook meals. And I'm just sitting there like, think about the message that is. Like you're trying to divide spouses, saying that your husband doesn't care about you, doesn't value you. And I think people are starting to see through these tactics. And they're seeing When public servants forget who they ultimately serve, you're going to get resentment. You're going to get bitterness. And we're seeing a lot of communities that have voted Democrat for 100 years saying, we're done. We're either not going to vote at all, or we're going to do the ultimate sin and we're going to vote for Trump as a big FU, because at least he listens to us. He hears our grievances and he understands the problems we're facing.
And he showed up to the Bronx. Come on, he showed up to the Bronx.
Absolutely.
Like,
There you
yeah,
go.
I think Trump is like the 50 Cent of presidential candidates. We're gonna take a quick commercial break. We're kicking in with Professor Nick Giordano of the P.A.S. report. We'll be right back after this important message.
November 5th, there's a proposition on the ballot that isn't what it seems. Proposition 1, the so-called Equal Rights Amendment, sounds good, but what's really hidden behind it? If passed, it could give boys the right to compete in girls' sports and invade their private spaces, like locker rooms, showers, and even domestic abuse shelters. It permanently enshrines gender identity in the state constitution, stripping women and girls of their safety, privacy, and opportunities. And parents, Prop 1 takes away your rights, allowing children to transition without your knowledge or consent. New York's Constitution already protects everyone from discrimination. Don't be misled. Prop 1 doesn't protect abortion rights. Those are secure in New York. But this amendment opens doors we can never close. On November 5th, protect our children, protect women's spaces, protect parental rights. Vote no on Proposition 1.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're back. It's the Urban Conservative Podcast. We're with Professor Nicholas Giordano of the P.A.S. report. Make sure you check him out wherever podcasts are available. We're talking about Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. What does this mean for political history in the United States?
I know we're talking
Go ahead.
national. I know we're talking
Go
national,
ahead.
but real quick, because we have a political science professor here, and the importance of these local races, the importance of your state assembly house races, your judge races. Just speak a little bit, if you can, to how important these are and the effect that they have on your, like, the day-to-day life. Because some people are telling me, like, I'm voting for Trump and I'm leaving, and I'm like, no. You got to go all the way down the ballot, buddy. So can you just speak a little bit of how important, especially here in New York, with Prop 1 and Prop 2, which we want you to vote yes on Proposition 2, the Clean Water Act. But can you speak a little bit to how important these local races are, these state races are?
Well, for New Yorkers, it's easy. You're living through it now. So if New Yorkers remember and think back when Governor Cuomo, or Emperor Cuomo, depending on how you perceive him, when he first came to office, he actually did govern as a moderate. He was someone that was very strategic, and he wasn't so far to the left. And the only reason why was because we had a Republican-controlled Senate. There were a few Democrats that joined with Republicans to make it a Republican-controlled Senate. And so in order for Cuomo to get anything done, he was forced to negotiate with Republicans. In 2018, New York became a unified government, meaning that one political party controlled the New York State Assembly, the New York State Senate, and the New York State governor. That was a disaster. So not a single Republican vote. They didn't need a single Republican vote to get any of their measures through. Well, what did we see? Well, we saw bail reform and letting criminals out on the street. We saw defunding the police efforts. We saw the build out of sanctuary policies here in New York State. And so Democrats have been able to ram through this far left agenda because Republicans don't have the power to stop them. And they don't have the power to force Democrats to negotiate so that we could find common sense policies and solutions to the issues New Yorkers face. So now, if New Yorkers go to the poll in droves and they actually change, let's say, the New York State Senate, no one realistically thinks the Assembly could flip Republican for this election cycle in particular, but the Senate is flippable. And if we flip the Senate, well, that means that forces Governor Hochul to go back to the middle. It forces the Assembly to start to moderate their positions and stop passing all these far left insane bills and ideas like Proposition 1, where they want to take away parental rights. Every election matters. And I can make an easy argument that the local and state elections are actually more important than a federal election because local and state government impacts us more directly, and we have an easier chance of changing the government here in New York State than you do on a national level. We're just one state on a national level. So you got to hope other states follow suit and vote the way you want them to vote. When it comes to a state assembly and a state senate, well, that's people of that state that are suffering. And so they could easily change the government if they choose to.
So listen, I'm gonna say this. I in light of Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden turnout the other night, I've heard on multiple news outlets, oh, he's reenacting the 1939 Hitler at Madison Square Garden thing. How? Okay. Not what your conservative hat, not what your, as a strictly a political science professor. Is that a ridiculous or a fair comparison to make between the 1939 Hitler thing and the Trump thing? Or why is that a totally ridiculous comparison to make?
Well, first of all, it's idiotic, right? I mean, Hitler was responsible for the slaughter of 12 million people. So anyone that tries to compare Trump to Hitler is just an imbecile. Like, I'm not going to mince words here. They're just imbeciles. When we look at it, first of all, we already have 4 years on record with Trump. So we know what his policies are going to be. Secondly, we lived through a major era of peace. I mean, the Middle East was the most peaceful I've ever seen it in my lifetime. I've never seen it that peaceful. But more importantly, if you look at what Democrats allege, it's always taking things out of context of what Trump says. So, for instance, there's very fine people on both sides. Well, the reality is the fact checkers didn't get to that until about 6 or 7 years later to say, yeah, he wasn't saying that white supremacists are good. When you look at the whole bloodbath comment, well, he's talking about the auto industry. If you allow Chinese cars to come into the United States and China could undercut our market, well, that's going to be a slaughter and a bloodbath for Ford and General Motors. So Democrats routinely take these things out of context. But the rhetoric, if you notice, hope is dead. Right? Hope, joy, that died. There's no more dreams, ambitions, and aspirations. Now it's darkness. You listen to them. And I was listening to a clip of Governor Tim Walz earlier, Kamala Harris's vice presidential nominee. And he's saying that Trump's closing argument is peddling in fear and chaos and disunity and wants us to attack each other. Our campaign has a closing message of joy, unity, and turning the page. And literally, like in the next line, and he's like, Trump is Hitler. He wants to take over the military. He wants to unleash the military. I'm on the list. You're on the list. And if he gets elected, it's the end of democracy. Like, these people are out of their minds. And if you notice, it's been the last week. Now, we always heard the references to Trump and Hitler in the past, but in the last week, it is now a coordinated and organized effort where they're all speaking from the same page, from the Democrat Party to the media, to the bureaucrats, to former bureaucrats, that, Trump is the greatest threat. And I think that they kind of overplayed their hand with that. First of all, I think with Trump, everything's baked into the cake, right? I don't think there's a single person alive that's going to sit there and be like, oh, well, now that Trump said that, I'm not voting for him anymore, right? I mean, it just doesn't work that way. And it's not like Trump is probably the most well-known candidate who has been investigated through and through. We know him better than any single politician that has ever served in the office. So people have made up their minds about Trump, but the Democrats don't have anything else. And the comparisons to Hitler are disgraceful. Like, they should be ashamed of themselves. Hitler was a genocidal maniac. Hitler wanted world domination. Trump wants America to be great again, right? I mean, that's his campaign platform. It's about
hold on. What question? Since we talk about Hitler, is it true he did meth? Do you?
I have no idea. I wasn't around.
I heard it was like crystal meth. I heard like it was a thing.
Oh, like no, bro. There's a video
of him like Hitler doing the whole tapping. Yeah, it crossed my mind every time he
messed out of his mind. They were giving the Nazi soldiers methamphetamine basically to keep them going, because what they were doing was Yeah, they
That's
were so
insane.
atrocious they needed to disconnect them what they were doing.
Trump's never even smoked a cigar, or had a drink, from what I understand. So where's that comparison? It's ridiculous, that comparison.
Well, it's not a comparison, but when you don't have a real campaign platform, when you don't have policies you could run on, well, that's the only thing they got left. They tried to hide Kamala Harris for so long that they can once it's been exposed, the more people see of her, the more they don't like her. And her policies are laughable. And so it's, let's just call Trump a fascist and let's hope that works. And if it doesn't, well, then so be it. At least we won't have to deal with Kamala Harris in 2028. But maybe it will work and we could get her in there and then we could control her.
So,
all right, so Ali, on the tail end of this, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on, take a look at this, y'all.
And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. God bless you, and God bless you. Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight,
all right, you gotta stop it. You gotta stop. It hurts. Stop. Okay, I have to ask this question.
This is an entire compilation of her saying the same thing everywhere she goes.
And using the same movements and the same inflection with her voice. Understand, when you get angry during a speech, it's supposed to be spur of the moment. It's supposed to come naturally, that you can't replicate it in speech after speech after speech. These people just put her out there. She does the same thing over and over again. And then they wonder, well, why do people think she's inauthentic? Why?
I gotta ask, Doc.
Did you watch the church video of her yesterday when she appeared at the church and all of a sudden she became a preacher?
Did you see the man video they put out?
What video?
He didn't see the. Did you see the I'm a man and I'm not scared? And I
I saw those.
What did you think when you saw that? Was that not the cringiest thing you've ever saw?
And I don't understand why they don't realize that the pandering simply does not work. I mean, again, Hillary Clinton tried to pander, right? Now, Hillary Clinton, dubious as hell, but at least she was smart. Hillary Clinton knew her policies. She knew what she was speaking about. Okay, when you look at Kamala Harris, she's an empty vessel. She needs things on a teleprompter. She doesn't understand the policies. She can't talk about the policies in any type of depth whatsoever. And so they have to play this game, and it simply doesn't work. People look at it and they sit there and they know. Find me a single person that says, I'm really enthusiastic to vote for Kamala Harris. They're not. Nobody's enthusiastic to vote for Kamala Harris. The reason that millions of people will vote for Kamala Harris is because they don't like Donald Trump. Now, the question is that enough to actually win you an election? I don't have the answer to that. It never used to be. It used to be that the campaigns that peddled in my opponent's bad, and that's why you should elect me, they usually lost those types of campaigns. Will it work this time? I don't know, because the mindset of America has changed. So they may be able to pull it off, but I think so many Americans are seeing through it. And you hear them on the streets every single day.
All right, so listen, hold on. Before you do that, Doc, I gotta ask. So, and you made mention of this authenticity issue. Can you think of a campaign in the history of our country that has been run? Let me ask it this way. Let me rephrase it. So you become a California's attorney general, you become a California senator, and you become the vice president. That doesn't happen if you're stupid. So am I wrong for looking at this as if this is far more diabolical? Because I don't buy the argument that Kamala Harris is stupid. I don't like that argument. But the alternative is that this is all diabolical. And I think that's far worse. Am I too far off on that?
I think it's both, to be honest with you. I think she is stupid, and I think that it is diabolical. I mean, just look at how they kept Joe Biden in office. They tried to hide his condition for over 4 years. Look at how they lied about Russia and the 51 intelligence agents that said that the Hunter Biden laptop was disinformation. So you see the diabolical issues there. Look at how they performed a coup against Joe Biden. Okay, so it's certainly diabolical. And understand, Kamala Harris, like, why hasn't she been held to account? She met with the president quite often. She was in the meetings with the president. She said 2 weeks before Biden dropped out of race that he is great. He runs circles around people. He's so into the policies. And then he dropped out. With Kamala Harris, the reason I say she's stupid, and maybe it's not stupid, maybe she's just lazy, where she doesn't want to know the nuances to policy. She doesn't want to know the details in policy, that she enjoys the title of vice president and senator and attorney general, but she doesn't want to do the work necessary in order to actually achieve things. Maybe that's it. I don't have the answer to that, but listening to her speak, well, there's a reason that she had to drop out of the 2020 presidential campaign before the first primary votes were even cast. And now we're seeing the reason that why she had to drop out, because when she does speak, she doesn't say anything. She uses a lot of words. And one of the things that's a pet peeve of mine is when she talks to people like they're 3-year-old children.
Because democracy, on the one
say.
hand, is so strong, but on the other hand, it's so fragile.
Well, I gotta ask this question on the tail end of this, right? So, what happens, right? And obviously, this is a guess, but what do you think happens in the catastrophic event of her winning this election? Where do you see things going for the next 4 years? And kind of the same thing on the Trump side. What happens? Trump wins.
Well, on the Republican side, if Trump loses, I think that there's going to be an internal breakup that goes on. I think there are a lot of Republicans that are sick and tired of establishment Republicans that are constantly fight harder against their own members than they do against the Democrats. The ones that just will sit there and go along to get along with the Democrats, that want to be friends with the media personalities and everything. So I think if he does lose, we're going to see a big fight in the Republican Party, and maybe it'll branch off and you'll see another party emerge. Who knows? If Trump wins, I think I will spend the next 3 weeks watching far left media outlets, because I think it'll just be hysterical to watch their meltdowns live on television. That will be worth the entertainment of it. But I also think that Democrats will then have their internal fights, right? You're going to have some moderate Democrats say the progressives went too far to the left. They were crazy. However, I am releasing an episode of my podcast on Wednesday talking about, well, what happens if Trump wins? I mean, think about this logically. If he really is the second coming of Hitler, and he really is a fascist, and he's really a threat to democracy, and you have former General Mark Milley coming out and saying it, former General John Kelly, former General Mattis coming out and saying it, you have other bureaucrats at the State Department saying it. My question is, well, are they trying to plant the seeds where they could try and not seat Trump? I mean, I don't see constitutionally how they could do that if Trump wins the election. But I do think that some of what we're seeing, some of the rhetoric, some of the leaks in the papers, I think some of it is trying to lay the groundwork to, dare I say, contest the election and contest Trump's suitability for the presidency. You already have Congressman Jamie Raskin on record basically saying that he's going to object to this election and that he doesn't believe that Trump could even be seated under the 14th Amendment. So we have no idea of the tricks that may be pulled if Trump wins to try and prevent him from becoming president of the United States.
Now, let me.
That would be a disaster, by the way, if that did happen.
So from a world geopolitical view, right? Do things get better if Trump wins, and do things get worse if Kamala wins? Like, just very briefly, because like I'm trying to get a snapshot for the audience of what they can expect from a Kamala presidency for our economy, for education, for all of these things versus what we get from a Trump presidency.
Well, the thing is, if we look, when we have the record over the last 3.5 years, adversaries have pushed the envelope, and they continue to push the envelope because they see a weak and feckless administration, and that they have no regard for and no respect for. And they kind of know how the administration's going to react. They know how far they could push. When, let's say, Trump does win. Well, Trump is very unpredictable. They know that one day Trump could say something nice about him. The very next day, he could drop the mother of all bombs on them. And so they're much more behaved simply because they don't know how Trump is going to react, and they don't want to miscalculate. They understand. And Iran figured it out, right? Iran hits a $1 billion drone. Everyone thinks Trump's going to unleash hell on Iran. Trump does nothing. Trump says, you hit that drone. Don't do it again. But I'm telling you now, you harm one American, you injure or kill one single American, you're going to face a real problem. And what happened? Iran launched some bombs near one of our bases. Americans got killed. And what did Trump do? He killed General Qasem Soleimani, something the Bush administration wanted to do, but didn't have the colonies to do it. Something the Obama administration wanted to do, didn't have the colonies. Trump did it. That sent a message to Iran. Oh, crap, we better back down here. When you look at Russia wasn't even starting to up his troops on the border of Ukraine during the Trump presidency. And when you look at China, Trump speaks China's language, right? It's all about economics. And China knows that they can't push too far when it comes to someone like Trump. So I think under a Kamala Harris administration, we're going to see more instability in the international system, the instability that we've been witnessing over the last 4 years. If Trump wins, I do think that things begin to settle down. Whether or not, I mean, listen, I don't really believe he could solve the war in Ukraine, Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 24 hours. But I do think that he'll actually call for both sides to come to the table to start talks to negotiate some type of ceasefire and then some type of peace agreement. And that's the main thing. You hear none of the talk today. How do we stop these conflicts abroad, particularly because we don't want them metastasizing and spreading beyond their borders, where we're going to get brought into these types of conflicts. So I do think that you'll have much more worldwide stability under a Trump administration than a Kamala Harris administration.
There it goes. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Nicholas Giordano of the P.A.S. report. You see it on your screens. Make sure you show him some love. PASreport.com is the website.
You got something else up there. You got something else up there.
What do I got up there? That's his website. What are you talking about?
Oh, it is?
got the
I didn't see the
report.
logo. I didn't see the logo up there. All right. Cool,
Hey,
cool,
what are you
cool.
talking about? It messed up my whole groove over
I didn't
there.
see the
You know what
logo.
saying?
I'm sorry. You got to make it bigger.
All right.
Hold on. You got to give him the full screen.
Yeah, there you go. Do the whole full screen thing. But ladies and gentlemen, make sure you support the PAS report. As you can tell, full of wisdom and information. PASreport.com. Always a pleasure to have you on the podcast with us, Professor Giordano. Any last parting words for the folks before we get out of here?
I just want to, every American should realize that this is one of the most consequential elections in American history. And I know political scientists and pundits say that every single election cycle, but this really is. This election will determine, is America still a center-right country, or is America a center-left country moving further and further to the left? We're going to find out within a week. Hopefully we get the results on election night. But every single American out there should be getting involved. Do your part. Volunteer this last week for campaigns. Take a half hour of your time, phone bank, door knock, whatever you could do, and make sure you vote.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the Urban Conservative Podcast. TUconservative.com is the website. Make sure you give this video a like, share, follow, subscribe. I am Abdul Ali. That guy up there is my twin brother, Raheem Architect Soto. That's Professor Giordano. This has been the Urban Conservative. Peace and love, y'all.
Voters, this November 5th, you have the chance to protect our most vital resource, clean water. Vote yes on Proposition 2, the Suffolk County Water Quality Restoration Act. Prop 2 will make critical upgrades to our outdated wastewater infrastructure, replacing polluting septic systems with clean water technology and expanding sewers, at no cost to homeowners. Plus, the Act provides tax-free grants to make these upgrades affordable. With just 1/8 of a penny added to the county sales tax, we can create a dedicated fund to clean our water, protecting our bays, harbors, and future. It's a small price to pay for a big impact. Not only will Proposition 2 improve water quality, but it will also create thousands of good-paying jobs, revitalize our business districts, and increase property values. This is an investment in our environment, our economy, and our community. Vote yes on Proposition 2. Clean water is essential. Let's protect it together.